it's gonna be alright.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Try and Stupid, where I take a look at the wonderful world of LGBTQIA++ news, because stupidity is intersectional. So the first story that I want to touch on this week involves Goldsmiths University, that real paragon of inclusivity and real progressive communist values, as one of their tutors massively upset the LGBTQIA++ community after they found out that she had been pretending to be NB. A university academic has sparked outrage after claiming to be transgender and asking students to call her Mixed Tippy Rampage before admitting it was a satirical character for a study. Dawn Mello, who was the preferred tutor for transgender and non-binary students at Goldsmiths University in southeast London, inhabited the toxic and unpleasant character online for several years. Mello, who demanded the use of gender-neutral pronouns, has now been blasted by the LGBTQIA++ community for treating trans lives as a performance piece. Students had been asked to refer to Mello as Mixed Tippy Rampage and only use NB terms such as they, them and their. But in an interview, Mello had said the alter ego was made up and evolved out of her experiences using social media. She said, "I was very suspicious of social media before I started using these accounts due to these platforms contributing to the poor mental health of young people." Dawn Mello was the echo chamber character that emerged, who started as one person, then transformed to Tippy Rampage. She acknowledged the character was unpleasant and misleading, adding that she understood it could be distressing and hurtful for others as both characters were extremely irritating. Mixed Tippy Rampage eventually became a collective of 69 other people, but she was branded unethical and shameful when the multiple identities emerged. Various tweets were aimed directly at Mello, mentioning just how offensive this was, with one person saying, "A lecturer at Goldsmiths has been pretending to be non-binary for 4 years for a fucking book she's been writing. Dawn Mello, you should be ashamed." Another said, "This is such a disgusting breach of trust and I'm offended and so hurt on behalf of the trans NB community who must have trusted her." Other tweets included someone saying they were going to apply to Goldsmiths, but now they're not so sure because someone pretended to be NB. Another person said, "Someone has been pretending to be non-binary. What a blow to the actual, real, non-binary people." Actual, real, non-binary people. The actual, real, non-binary people. Do we have to go through the list of all the magical non-binary genders? I think we should. So this is just to demonstrate a point. We've got lots of non-binary people who are incredibly furious at the idea of someone pretending to be NB when their own genders are nothing but an absolute joke. They are nothing but a parody of what any other kind of identity could be. These are the ones where Poe's law really comes into it. We don't know whether they are indeed serious about who they are or whether indeed it is a joke. Do I need to bring up moon gender again? You saw the list. We know how mad this gets, and yet they feign outrage when someone claims to be non-binary. I mean, we've been constantly told that we should believe whatever anyone says, whatever gender they are. If you say you are a woman, that's all you need to do. You don't need to transition. You don't need to take hormones. You don't need surgery. You don't need to socially transition. You can just say you're a woman, or you can just say you're a man, or you can just say you're a horse. That's what gender transition means. That is what the real joke is to trans people nowadays. This bizarre authoritarian push from the rabid trans activists. Not someone who is parodying the non-binary community, which, let's be honest, as I pointed out, is a parody in itself. And it's not like Mello hid this. In fact, she's been quite open about this since at least 2016, making up various identities such as Tippy Rampage, living individual, Tippy Rampage Collective, fictional activist group, Lesbian Seagull, living individual, and Countess Dankula. Wow, that one in particular quite impressed me. I would love to see Countess Dankula's channel.
I am a she.
But it kind of shows that this person was having a little bit of fun as well. If she's going to be referencing Dank, she must be a little bit spicy, which is quite unique for Goldsmiths. This is a university that is renowned for its quite communist leanings. And in fact, last year, it was the source of quite a lot of controversy when their LGBT group advocated for the use of Soviet gulags. Gulags, like it's the same university. They are exactly what people imagine the progressive left to be when they make jokes of them. But it doesn't take a lot to outrage the folks at Goldsmiths anyway. So much of the non-binary community tells people that you have to respect exactly who they are, and they seem to be fairly humorless. And whilst Tippy Rampage's social media seems to have been largely scrubbed from the internet, I do love the fact that she made it clear that Tippy was meant to be annoying. Like, anyone who is using Twitter and has come across rabid trans activists knows just how true that is, pronouns in the bio and all that. So I could imagine that she had quite a bit of fun doing this. But it's quite similar in the vein to like Titania McGrath and all these other kind of parody accounts that have sprung up mocking the progressive left. A lot of it's just a bit of fun. And like, do you really expect someone to not have a sense of humour about any of this? And why do they always have to be bending the knee to the non-binary people? I mean, this was just a joke at their expense. Allow them to do it. Naturally, there are calls for her to be fired as a result. Of course there is. How dare one make fun of the moon genders? But I find it interesting just how a group which is pretty much a parody in of itself, one which tells people that they have to respect whatever pronouns they are, all of a sudden flips out when it turns out that someone could dare to pretend to be non-binary. I mean, again, you guys are the ones who have an open border on gender. You're the ones who decide that anyone can be anything. So you only have yourselves to blame if someone can just say that they are MB and pretend to be MB and not mean it. I mean, I'm sure I must have come across a lot of people who say they are non-binary just to fit in with the queer crowd. I'm sure this isn't a rarity that is going on. There's going to be a lot of people who do that. Maybe you need to think of a bit more of a definition to stop this from happening if it's such an outrage to you. So the next story that I want to cover is one which I actually found quite interesting. It does sound a little bit dry, but just stick with me. Is it because I'm transgender? Voting site forces woman to show ID. The Mecklenburg County Board of Elections admits it made a mistake after a trans woman told Channel 9 that workers at a Mecklenburg County election site forced her to show ID on Tuesday because they didn't believe she was who she said she was. She didn't want to be identified, but said it happened at the Cornelius Town Hall precinct. She says she pulled up and filled out a form to get a ballot, but then the chief judge came out and said, "I need ID." She says, "What's the issue?" And then the judge says, "The issue is that your face doesn't match your name." And why? Why must you see my ID? It's not a requirement. The judge responds, "For you, it is a requirement." And then the heavy line dropped. "Is it 'cause I is trans?" Now, she's not a felon, she's over the age of 18 and has voted in every single election since she's been eligible, and that is the only bit of information we have on who this person is. So what we have is a story which has run in several queer publications, as it were, of a trans woman being told that she can't vote, and that this is yet another example of everyday transphobia. But again, we know very little of who this person is. All we know is that this is someone who says they are a trans woman and they were asked to provide ID because their appearance didn't really match the name that they were filling out. So what way does this go? Is this someone who has transitioned every way but legally? So they're still registered with a male name, but they've done everything else so they appear female. This is something which happens. Bizarrely, this is a step that people forget to do, or they think that they can't do it when they actually can. Or is this someone who has changed their name but has done little else? I mean, you only have to look at the likes of this to realise that that is something which does happen again. And if this is simply an idea of this person being clocked and being told, oh, you can't vote, well, it was just a bit of a setback at that. Like, she wasn't told that she absolutely couldn't vote. It was just, like, there would have been other ways of stopping this person from voting if that was indeed the intention here. And I think it's concerning because this person has chosen to remain anonymous, completely anonymous. And if we're trying to call this as a reason as to how trans people are oppressed in everyday society, we need to know what the other side of the story is. Now, obviously, the local council are going to try and, appease the offended, because that seems to always be what happens in these situations. But I think that there's probably a bit more to this. Now, voter fraud and using various IDs is, at the moment, quite a controversial topic in both America and in the UK, and I know people feel very strongly about it. However, if you, for example, you have a name like John Smith and you have a clear Jane going to fill it out and someone notices that, like, that in itself is probably going to cause suspicion, or if it's the other way around. It does sound like a bit of a mean thing. Like, how can if you're happy with your transition, if you just want to be known as a certain name, then, you shouldn't be impeded from voting. And yeah, I can certainly see the argument there. But I think that we need a bit more on exactly what this person's situation is before this is considered a matter of, like, absolute transphobia. I don't think this is a problem that many trans people really face. I'm going to be honest. At least people who are actually serious about transitioning. So the last story that I want to touch on this week is one which is quite relevant for the day before this video came out, and it concerns Armistice Day in the UK. So for those of you in America, this is marked on the 11th of November every year as the anniversary of the end of the First World War, and it's a day in which we remember the lives of those who've basically given all they have for their own country, their ultimate sacrifice. And it is a very important day in the UK, and it's one that a lot of people treat seriously. And there was a bit of outrage in the UK as it appeared that a Pride Poppy was being sold online. In fact, it was being sold on eBay. Now, it should be said straight away that this was not something which was authorised by the Royal British Legion. This isn't an official poppy which was being sold by them. However, the person who was selling it did claim that they were using it to raise money for the Royal British Legion. Personally, I wouldn't always trust that. The amount of dodgy sellers there are online, there's no way that you could ever know that that's happening. Give your money directly to the Royal British Legion and not these sellers on the side. You don't know what they're actually going to be up to. But anyway, this caused a lot of discussion in the UK and some outrage as people were claiming that the LGBT community were co-opting the Day of Remembrance. But on the other side, a lot of LGBT people also thought, well, this questioning itself is somewhat homophobic. Like, why does it matter? Like, why can't people have a Pride Poppy? So, whilst this isn't something which was authorised by the Royal British Legion, this is still something I would disagree with, even if it was. I think that Remembrance Day is something which is purely for all the people who gave their lives, regardless of their age, their race, their sex, their sexuality, their gender, whatever. It's important to remember those who gave everything they did, and not as a day of making other political statements, which is effectively what the Pride Poppy is. And it's why other poppies are quite controversial. The White Poppy, for example, which is more of like a pacifist poppy, that's one which a lot of people find very disrespectful. I think that it's fine to just except that the public is only really going to be backing one in this instance. The day has a very specific purpose, and it shouldn't be co-opted by other political movements. And people have tried to co-opt it in the past. Years ago, Britain First tried to sell like their own version of the Poppy on their website, which is just going to go in their back pocket. Britain First are quite a nasty group, to put things lightly. And so there have been people in the past trying to do this. But I would also add, for those who are trying to push for there to be an official Rainbow Poppy, that there are plenty of LGBTQIA++ holidays throughout the year. I did a whole video on this a couple of weeks ago, just the amount of different days there are. We don't need to co-opt anything else to push the message of all-inclusive or respecting all sexualities, all genders. You've got Pride Month, Pride History Month, you've got Trans Day of Remembrance, which is coming up quite soon, actually. I believe it's coming up in like just over a week's time, if not a bit longer. So you don't have to even wait that much more time before you can honour those kinds of things. But I see nothing wrong with just honouring everyone who has sacrificed for our freedoms. I think that if you're going to be selective, regardless of what way you're leaning, whether you only want to remember the LGBT or only remember everyone but the LGBT, then you're doing a huge disservice to everyone whose lives have been lost. But what are your thoughts on the stories I've covered this week? Is there anything in particular I've missed out? Please let me know in the comments. Just before I go, I did a live stream a couple of days ago where I formally unveiled the Rose of Dawn gift shop, because Christmas is coming up quite soon. You can get mugs, you can get tops, you can get tote bags, phone cases. I've tried to keep the prices down a little bit, but I don't know how long I can kind of do that because I'm new to Teespring. But if you see anything there you like, please pick it up. It would definitely help me out. But thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, please be sure to like and subscribe. You can support me on Patreon and Subscribestar, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks once again, and I'll see you all next time. And a special thanks to Alex Meadows, Casey Adolphson, Dan Norman, Fenella Cooney, James C. George, Kim Vandry, Latin Creature, Liz Udesu, Nova B, Ricardo Jose, Rose Hypnol, Stephen, The Poor of Rizzo, Traname Girl, Green Potato Chips, Laisha, James Dorans, James UK, Moy Felicita, Kim Vandry, Sarah, and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.